going on? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the recap edition, going back and taking a look at the big stakes action from Pimlico Racecourse the weekend of May the 18th. We will do a deep dive into the Preakness Stakes. We'll also go over the quick hit stakes montage portion with all the other graded stakes action from Pimlico. It's an all Pimlico recap edition of the pod. However you listen to this thing, thank you for doing so. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. However you take it in, please rate, review, and subscribe. Beneath the video player on YouTube is where you can leave questions, comments, or concerns, or you can send them over to me directly on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. As we always do, also, we will button things up at the weekend's best as far as buyers are concerned at the end of the program. But we got a ways to go before we get to that. Let's get into it. The 13th race at Pimlico on Saturday afternoon, the Grade 1 Preakness Stakes, mile and 3/16 on the main track for 3-year-olds. Let's take a look at the field. Morning line favorite at 5-2 was Improbable for Bob Baffert and Mike Smith. He went off as the post-time favorite at odds of 5-2, but this was a race that if you were so inclined, you could take a shot against, and you would get rewarded given the fact that the second choice was 5-1, the third choice 6-1, fourth choice was 6-1, fifth choice was 7-1. You had a number of ways that you could go. When all was said and done, we had a rather formful result on top. It was not a stunner who the winner ended up being. Here's the stretch run of this year's Preakness Stakes.
10.56, a quarter to go at Pimlico. Warriors Charge leads the way, and on the inside, War of Will, and they're at war in the final furlong. War of Will and Tyler Gaffleyon slipping through on the inside, shifting out just a tad under left-handed urging. Warriors Charge trying to salvage second, and here comes Everfast on the inside, and Owendale a late bit on the outside. War of Will won! Wow, War of Will!
War of Will prevails and wins the second jewel in the American Triple Crown. He wins the Preakness at odds of 6-1. Everfast with a giant effort. To be frank, I have no idea where it came from, but he finishes second at odds of 29-1. And Owendale, another horse coming from the back of the pack, or toward the back anyway, he finishes third, rounds out your trifecta at odds of 7-1. The 5-2 favorite, Improbable, finishes off the board in sixth. Let's take a look at War of Will. He's 4 of 10 lifetime, 6 times in the money from 10 lifetime starts. A shade under $1.5 million in career earnings, owned by Gary Barber, trained by Mark Casse, bred by Flaxman Holdings Limited in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Tyler Gaffleyon. You can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He's a son of Warfront out of a Sadler's Wells mare named Visions of Clarity. Let's get the housekeeping out of the way with the speed figures and such. War of Will, 99 Beyer speed figure, 122 pace adjusted time form US rating, 120 on the raw side. So that's one of those situations where everything seems to check out. About a 20-point differential, give or take a point or two from those two figs. It's a good way for those of you that are unfamiliar with doing it that way or approaching the time form US ratings with the Beyer speed figures. Always look for about a 20-point difference. And when that 20 points doesn't match up, then you need to go through and do a little bit more of a deep dive, a little bit more of a sort of in-depth investigation about which one you think is a little bit more accurate than the other one in any given situation. Sometimes one is better than the other. Sometimes the other is better than the other one. That's up to you as the handicapper, though, to go home and go through and do your due diligence. I thought it was a good effort from War of Will all around. Look, it's a situation where he had an absolute candy trip. No one can argue with that. I don't think anybody involved with the horse would argue with that. But the good news is, we've talked about it time and time again, most good horses, they get good trips because they make good trips. And a horse like War of Will, who this time around, Tyler Gaffleyon didn't need to use him out of the gate like he did in Louisville 2 weeks ago. And I think that's why that horse was as eager and as keen as he was down in the Kentucky Derby. This time around, much more relaxed, much more comfortable down, sitting in the pocket, in behind fast fractions. 22-2, 46 for a half, 10-2 for 3/4. They stopped the clock for the mile and 3/16 and 54-1. Time form US had the half, the 3/4, and the mile calls, all of them color-coded red, meaning they were fast, perhaps compromising horses closer to the pace and helping the horses coming from off the pace. So something that you want to factor in. I think War of Will ran a giant race, even with the dream trip of all dream trips. Now, is it going to be a scenario where going forward, and it sounds like Mark Casse has said that they're going to be looking at a race like the Belmont Stakes for his next start. He would potentially be the only 3-year-old to run in all 3 of them if no one else exits the Preakness that also ran in the Derby. It doesn't sound like Improbable, doesn't sound like win-win-win, and doesn't sound like, who am I missing? There's one other horse, I believe. But point being, doesn't sound like any of them are going to be trying that third round of the Triple Crown at this point anyway. Things can change. We have a long way to go. We've got 3 weeks. But War of Will, I think, is you could make the case, especially if Maximum Security does not go in the Belmont, if Country House does not go in the Belmont, War of Will right now could potentially be in the driver's seat for earning year-end honors. And I know this sounds a little bit silly to be talking about this on May the 20th, but I do think most of these connections and everybody affiliated with these 3-year-olds, they've got their eye down the road. You want to have the champion 3-year-old. If War of Will, let's say he goes, acquits himself nicely in the Belmont, wins second, third, something along those lines, and you go and you look, Maximum Security, yes, he's unbeaten, but right now all he has to his name is the Florida Derby. He doesn't have the Kentucky Derby. Country House, he has the Kentucky Derby, but he sounds like he's still not ready to go and might be a little while before we see him again. And then after that, it's kind of just toss them all up in the air. So War of Will is not slowly, he's basically put himself in a position where if the horse stays sound and continues on and runs the way that he has, whether it was the Louisiana Derby, which unfortunately, that's a bad example. The Risen Star, he got hurt in the Louisiana Derby. The Kentucky Derby didn't work out, but now he's got 2 graded stakes races, including a grade 1 victory to his name here in the Preakness. Let's say he goes on to the Belmont Stakes, runs well. Heck, if he wins, he is squarely the horse to beat. But if he runs well there, then you got to assume that those big races over the summer, he puts himself in prime position to end up with year-end awards here. I thought it was a good effort. I think he's a horse that will continue to improve. The 99, I expected it to be slightly better than it was, to be honest. Going into the race, I thought he was probably going to be in that low 100 range, but it is what it is. A 99, it's, again, we're splitting hairs between a 99 and a 100 or a 101, but War of Will, I have no knocks about this effort. I like that Tyler Gaffalione was patient with him, saw that rail started to open up a little bit, shot him on through, and this is a horse that, Mark Cassidy talked about the athleticism, and that's why, look, he didn't go down in the Kentucky Derby after the little kind of clipping heels or being between legs and whatnot. You need a horse, when a hole opens up like that, you need to have the horse that can go. It's one thing to tell him to go. It's another thing for the horse to respond. And for a horse like War of Will to be able to respond, get into that hole and go on with it, I was impressed with the effort, even with the dream trip of all dream trips down on the rail. Everfast, I kind of said it when I brought up the results. No idea where that race came from. He had never done anything remotely close to this in his career. He earns a 96 Beyer and a 118 Timeform US rating. He finished in 42.34. That's the fastest come-home time in the entire race, even faster than a horse like Laughing Fox, who essentially came from dead last. He got a big pace to run at, so that certainly helped his cause, but I have no idea where the Everfast run came from. But look, maybe if he continues on this path, he can end up being a player in some of these big races. Owendale, there's a number of people that have brought up that perhaps Inside was where you wanted to be at Pimlico on the main track on Saturday. I don't want to say that I'm discrediting that or going against that, because for the most part, a horse like Everfast, down the lane, yes, he was down on the inside, and early on he was saving ground. But rounding the far turn, he was sort of out in the clear. It was a beautiful ride from Joel Rosario. But it's not like he was glued to the rail the entirety of it. Rounding the far turn, he was out trying to find a seam mid-pack, sort of 3-4 paths off the rail. Maybe Inside was slightly advantageous. I've gone on record a number of times. I am not someone that's going to just immediately jump to bias. To me, it almost feels like it's... I don't want this to sound as though I'm just like throwing shade at people that acknowledge them, because look, I think biases are legitimate and they're real. But I think when all of a sudden things don't necessarily go our way, or we look at it after 1 or 2 races, the sample size is not large enough for me anyway to make a definitive statement about, yes, I think it's a gold rail, or Inside is dead, or it's speed, or whatever it may be. With the way the races were run on Saturday at Pimlico, I'm reluctant to just sit here and say that the Inside was gold. I think it helped, but as I've said a number of times, you know what helps? The shortest trip around the racetrack, when you go a shorter distance than everyone else does. So I'm going to leave that to you. I don't necessarily think it was an absolute Inside bias. I don't think it hurt, but unless the rail's dead, it never hurts to be inside and save as much ground as possible. Do with that what you will. Owendale was a horse that was floated wide off the far turn, about 8 or 9 paths. Like the way that he finished, to me, this at least validated that race from Keeneland. To me, it looks like this is a horse that's continuing the right direction. Now, again, he's another one, took advantage of a hot pace, but I think this is a good horse. Well, at least he's shown to me, anyway, that he's better than I necessarily thought. I said leading into this race, proved to me that the run at Keeneland and Lexington was legitimate. I believe he did so in this spot. I think you have to look at him as a player going down the road if the circumstances set up nicely for him. Warriors Charge, to me, if you don't think War of Will ran the best race, I think you can make an argument that Warriors Charge ran the best race. This was a big effort from this horse. 94 Beyer, 122 pace-adjusted time form U.S. rating, 117 raw time form rating. Again, it's important to factor in. He was out there cutting out those fractions, and he wasn't totally embarrassed. You take a look at it. There's a length and a quarter between first and second, a nose between second and third, and a length and a quarter between third and Warriors Charge. You're talking about, what, a shade over 2.5 lengths? I mean, this was a big effort from this horse, given as fast as he went. I think he is the kind of horse that I don't know what the plans are, what the thoughts are, and I would need to go through and take a look and see from a pedigree standpoint. But there's a part of me, and just off the top of my head, I can't remember what he is. You know what? The good news is I have Formulator right in front of me. I can look it up. I think he's the kind of horse that if you were so inclined, I don't know that they would do this. But I could see him being the kind of horse that if you don't think the distance is a major issue for him, he has a running style for a race like the Belmont Stakes. Now, again, I'm not suggesting they're going to do this. I haven't read one way or the other. He's that kind of horse that I think could end up being a forwardly placed horse. The fractions theoretically would be much more mild than this. You're probably going to get a half closer to 48 and change than you are 46 flat. And when you take a look at his pedigree, Munnings, all right, Broken Vow on the bottom. I retract everything I just said. I think he's a nice horse. If his pedigree said a little bit more about distance, maybe I'd be inclined to think that route. The pedigree doesn't seem to check out, so basically just eliminate everything I just said. But that doesn't change the fact that I think this was a giant effort from this horse. And look, I think he's another one that he acquitted himself nicely. He still needs to prove a few different things. Can he do this against better horses? He, again, ran really well against better horses for the first time. Forget about the run against winners down at Oaklawn, where he was just better than everyone else. He's never shown that he can pass horses, though, so that's something that if there's a scenario where somebody out sprints him early, he's going to need to answer that call. But if you think this is a little bit of a more moderate pace next time around, say they go 46-4 as opposed to 46, why can't a horse like Warriors Charge stick around and get brave? Laughing Fox, I like this horse. The problem is he's completely void of early speed, and I think more often than not, you're going to look at this as sort of a ceiling for this horse, unless they go supersonic on the speed front. Because he has no speed early whatsoever. He's going to come with his bid. I think he'll run all day, but he needs some big pace to run at. Improbable. I think we're at a point now, and I mentioned it in one situation. I don't remember what video it was or if it was a podcast or a radio interview last week, but I think we're at a point now where you have to acknowledge the idea that perhaps Improbable, most people I would think want to go right to the distance. I think you have to acknowledge the fact that Improbable might not have improved at all from his 2-year-old year to his 3-year-old year. And I think the speed figures would tend to sort of weigh that out. You go through into Formulator, you pull up the chart for this year's Preakness. You can go through, and the beautiful thing about Formulator, for those of you that are unfamiliar with it or have never used it, it'll go back and take a look at the prior 10 Beyer speed figures earned as well as the next one. Now, a horse like Improbable doesn't have 10 lines just yet, but I go through and I look. Going back to his career debut, I'm going to give you that one all the way through this most recent run. These are the figures on the Beyer scale that he's earned. 85, 93, 96, 95, 99, 96, 93. That to me sounds like a horse that's not improving. It seems like perhaps he was that precocious 2-year-old. And he wasn't a traditional 2-year-old. He didn't show big speed. He was kind of lazy, kind of gangly out there. Threw another fit in the gate. That's another thing. I think you got to start wondering if this horse is improving. And guess what? The time form numbers would tend to bear that out as well. We'll go back to his career debut. 106, 108, 117, 117, 120, 116, 117. You know, you get to a certain point and you go, he's a nice horse. I'm not trying to take anything away from him there, but maybe he's not the horse many people had hoped he would blossom into at this point. He's still nice and he can still win races, but I'm starting to wonder if he just never improved from his 2-year-old year to his 3-year-old year. Win-win-win. This is probably the race that finally, okay, let's turn him back. I love that the connection stayed on with him because I didn't think he got a fair shake in the Derby. I thought this was interesting with the blinkers going on. He was a lot closer to the pace than he normally is, and he just didn't have the punch down the lane. I think you turn him back, he's going to be a nice one-turn horse. Bourbon War, the blinker experiment, I don't think worked. He never really looked all that comfortable or looked like a contender at any point in the race. you know, it's too early to completely throw him out. I still think there's ability here. It's going to be interesting to see where they choose to come back with him, and I would imagine it'll be without blinkers next time. Signalman ran kind of the way I thought he would. Another twist of fate, relatively close to the pace, paid the price. Maybe it was the dirt, maybe it was the class, maybe it was a combination of all the above. Another twist of fate still needs to prove that he can win off of a synthetic track and without the lead. He hasn't done any of those at this point. Always Mining, relatively close to the pace when the real running began. He paid the price. This was a horse that, again, we talked about it leading into the race. It's one thing to do it when you're 1-20. How do you fare against better horses? Maybe we got that answer there. And Market King, he looked overmatched on paper to begin with, and we cannot finish the Preakness talk without discussing Bodie Express, who became the folk hero of the Preakness. I was stunned when later on in the evening when I went on to Twitter on my phone and I saw that the top trending piece was not the Preakness. The story in the sort of banner up top was War of Will wins Preakness, and then I looked down and the top trending thing in all of the United States, at least as far as my settings are concerned, was Bodie Express. And people were quite taken by the effort from Bodie Express. For obviously folks that listen to this are racing fans and people that know what's going on. The number of people that were acknowledging like, oh, well, he didn't cross the wire last, he deserves credit. He didn't have a 120-pound weight on his back, or 115 pounds or whatever you want. Come on now. But it's still, look, it's good that the horse came out of it and he's fine, he's healthy. Good that John Velasquez came out of it unscathed. Bodie Express is better than your typical maiden. Doesn't change the fact that he is still a maiden. I think he needs to go. Let's break the maiden. Let's move on to something else down the road. But Bodie Express adds a little bit of intrigue to a race where leading into it, look, the storylines were a little bit on the lackluster side without the first 4 horses to cross the wire first in the Derby, or a horse like Maximum Security, who was one of those first 4 as well. But War of Will, look, beautiful trip, but I think he's a racehorse. I thought this was a good effort from him. Hats off to the connections, Mark Casse, Gary Barber, Tyler Gaffalione with the ride. War of Will is the champion of the 2019 Preakness. He gets the job done with a 99 buyer and a 122 pace-adjusted Timeform US rating. Now let's dive in to let's do the stakes montage and the quick hits. I'll come back after you run through them all. It's all the graded stakes races from Pimlico on Friday and Saturday. I'll give you some quick hits and then we'll dive in to the weekend's best buyers. So here we go. Stakes montage.
Straightens in. The outside Point of Honor is set down. Here is Point of Honor. And up the inside comes Eulalie. 3 across the track with a furlong to go. Point of Honor. Eulalie on the inside. Cookie Dough in between horses. Cookie Dough surrounded inside and outside. And Point of Honor and Eulalie are coming to settle it. Point of Honor just out kicking Eulalie, who's trying. It is Point of Honor. Javier Castellano again. Point of Honor does it from Eulalie second. 44 there at the top of the stretch. Wait for it. Wait for it has grabbed the lead. Wait for it kicks on at the 3/16. Clubman's running a huge race. Clubman now angles to the outside, and You're to Blame closing out in the center of the course, and so is Cordmaker, the one widest out, and Tenfold has won a dream run down to the inside. Tenfold has come through. Tenfold somehow has come through. Here's Tenfold in the Pimlico special. You're to Blame and Cordmaker. Top of the stretch now, Kofefe in a 44.43 smoking half mile, hand-ridden at the 3/16, opening up 4 lengths, 5 lengths, almost 6 lengths. Kofefe, Javier Castellano on a rocket filly here. Kofefe is going to get some good press. Kofefe opening up 7, 8 lengths. Kofefe, look at this. Kofefe in a minute 7.70. The track record. Just 11.50 into the stretch now. On the outside, Golden Award's got every chance to quicken, but My Lady Curlin slowed it up and got a little more left. It's a stretch battle at the 8th pole. Outside, Golden Award. Now to the inside, My Lady Curlin. Nothing between them. Head to head and nose to nose with a 16 to go. Photos coming up. My Lady Curlin. My Lady Curlin stretches a photo finish. Golden Award surged back late. Very close. Very close. Inspector Lindley now trying to swing in action. Comes out out wide, and down to the inside is Just Tower, and they've got 3/16 left to go, 6 minute 11.25, and here's Catholic Boy, a narrow lead. Real Story tries to battle. They may have bumped and brushed just a little bit. Oh, Dionysus Just Howard, and here comes Admission Office surging up on the inside. Catholic Boy, Admission Office, Catholic Boy, Admission Office. Then Just Howard or Real Story, followed by 82 half mile and turns for home, kicking away a length and a half. Gladiator King now making a run on the outside. There is Pyron to pick up a share. Coming back for a little more, Admiral Lynch on the far outside. Malpai is battling bravely at the fence, really, too. And Lexitonian gets a good split. Here comes Lexitonian, 17-1. Lexitonian trying to get up. Photo, I believe it's Lexitonian. Gladiator King gave all. Looming just in behind them. 44.84 was the half mile. They're into the stretch now in the sprint. And Lewisfield trying to fight off Wentz, and does. On the outside, Pro Forma, New York Central sneaking up on the inside, and Ricardo Santana Jr. has come through on the rail with New York Central. Pro Forma running gamely second, and Lewisfield is third. New York Central in Maryland. New York Central driven hard on the outside. The Way I Am has every opportunity to quicken up down to the inside from third position, then followed by Viva Vegas out in the center of the course. They've got a furlong left to go past the Turfside Terrace, and they're getting a good look at Mitchell Road pulling away by 3. Viva Vegas on the outside trying to make a race of it in the late stages. Viva Vegas closing on the far outside just a bit, and The Way I Am is right there too. It is Mitchell Road. Mitchell Road went all the way.
All right, quick hits. Here we go. We'll rip through the stakes montage. Black Eyed Susan, I thought it was a big effort from Point of Honor. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg for her. She's a filly that's bred for distance. I've always thought maybe a race like the Alabama is when she's going to be at her best, out to 1.25 miles. But she got the 1.125 here just fine. And I even think a race like the CCA Oaks, the beginning of Saratoga. I think, this 3-year-old filly division's been a little bit hit or miss thus far. Maybe a horse like Point of Honor can start to get a little bit of, establish some kind of pecking order as far as the 3-year-old girls are concerned. Cookie Dough, I've been clamoring for her to finally turn back. It sounds like that's going to happen in the Acorn here coming up at Belmont Park. She ran her eyeballs out here in the Black Eyed Susan. Distance is just way too far for her. I believe she is being transferred to a new barn. You can find that story over on DRF.com. Pimlico Special, I didn't think it was a great race. Tenfold, great trip, got the job done. When you see a million horses across the track at about the quarter pole, you have to kind of wonder the quality of the field. I don't think we're going to be getting any superstars or any giants coming forward out of that race, but crazier things have happened. We still have a ways to go. And look, that older division is not very good right now, so maybe it is a division where a horse like Tenfold can step up and take the division by the horns. Arguably the star of the weekend came in the Miss Preakness. Kofefe, if she goes like that, and earns that 107 buyer that she did in the Miss Preakness, shattering all sorts of records. You got to look at it and say she's going to be one of, if not the outright favorite, for the Breeders' Cup, for the Filly and Mare Sprinters. It was just a devastating effort from her. She never gave anybody a chance. She blew the doors off the field. You've all seen it by now, and if you haven't, do yourself a favor, go take a look. Rewind it. It's in the stakes montage. Just a stunning effort from Kofefe there in that Miss Preakness. She's going to be a major horse going forward, it seems like. DuPont Distaff, I don't really have anything to say about the race. The Dixie, thought it was a good starting off point for the 2019 season for Catholic Boy. Sounds like the Suburban could be the next stop for him. Longer term goals, the Whitney or the Arlington Million. The beautiful thing with a horse like this, he can do a little bit of everything. He can run as well on the turf as he does on the dirt. I still maintain I think he's better on the main track. I know after this weekend, many people said, turf's got to be where he goes. I still think he's a better dirt horse than he is a turf horse, but we'll see. Jonathan Thomas, very good trainer. They'll continue on with him. It sounds like, again, the Suburban could be the next step. The Chick Lang, I thought it was a really game effort from Lexitonian to go and run down the horse out there on the front end. There was 3 of them across the wire. Another race where I just don't know if we're dealing with the best of the best. I feel like it could be a little bit of that was the time to have any of those horses going forward against better horses. Maybe they don't acquit themselves quite as well. The Maryland Sprint, I can say the exact same thing. Great ride by Ricardo Santana on New York Central. Stays down on the inside, shoots up the wood, gets the job done. But a dream trip. I'm not sold on the quality of that field. That's another race where when the waters get deeper, I don't know if those horses will be able to come out of it and fare as well. And the Gallarette, Kofefe, War of Will, they're the big names. Catholic Boy of the weekend. Mitchell Road, she might be the goods. She never gave any of those other fillies a chance on that grass, and that was a decent enough field. It may not have been a grade 1 field, but I think Mitchell Road is the kind of horse now going forward that you have to look at seriously in some of these. You know, I would try her in a grade 1 somewhere. Maybe a mile is a little bit on the sharper side, but we start getting to these mile and an eighth, mile and a 16th. Like I immediately, right now, the first race I thought of was the Diana. A mile and an eighth. I don't think that's going to be an issue for her. Her running style is beautiful. She relaxes kindly and she goes on. She's just an absolute monster right now. And if you were unaware of this, Mitchell Road, her younger half brother, is the Kentucky Derby winner, Country House, via disqualification, but he is still the winner of the Kentucky Derby. So Mitchell Road, big effort from her there, winning the Galloway. Let's get into it as far as the best performances from a Beyer standpoint are concerned this past weekend. We'll take them right in order. The 3-year-old males, no surprise. War of Will, a 99 in the Preakness. 3-year-old fillies on dirt, Covfefe, a 107, giant figure in the Ms. Preakness. 3-year-old males on grass. Front Run the Fed, a 91 and a non-winners of one other than at Belmont. 3-year-old fillies on grass. Dog Tag and Seek and Destroy. They earn 87s, 1 in the Hilltop, 1 in the Soaring Softly. Older males on dirt. 3-way tie, 3 different races. Cautious Giant, Conquest Windy City, New York Central. 100s in a non-winners of 3 lifetime. A $32,000 claimer, as well as the Maryland Sprint. Older fillies and mares on dirt. Stormy Embrace. She wins the musical romance with a 99 Beyer speed figure. Older males on grass. Catholic Boy, we just spoke about him. You saw him in the stakes Montage with the 96 Beyer in the Dixie. And who I just spoke about, Mitchell Road, the older fillies and mares on grass. She earns a 95 in an impressive win in the Galloway. There you have it, the weekend's best as far as Beyer speed figure performances are concerned here on the recap edition. However you've been listening to this thing, thank you for doing so. You have YouTube, you have SoundCloud, you have iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. However you take it in, please rate, review, and subscribe. Questions, comments, concerns beneath the video player on YouTube or directly to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. I will be back at the end of this week. Oh, I should say the end of the week. Thursday with the preview edition. Figure out between now and then what the preview edition is going to entail. But now we've got a couple weeks where we can take a breath. We'll slowly but surely start to see these fields start to come together for that big day of racing at Belmont Park for the Belmont Stakes and the undercard. So I got some time and we'll figure some things out between now and then. Until I come back with the preview edition though. Good luck this week, however you play, whatever you play, and wherever you play. This has been the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show.